Hey friends, I hope you're having a great, what is it today? Hump day. It's just so much more fun to say hump day than Wednesday, I think. And it's accurate. Anyway, I'm here right outside the courthouse. It's back there. And I had my first day of jury duty today, or I was called, but I had to postpone because I have work Friday. But I was so excited walking up, feeling like I was in SVU, taking a picture with the courthouse, sending it to my mom like it's me and Bae. No, but it's always conflicting. I am currently writing my thoughts out. I have finally identified kind of where my mind is, the feeling of having two minds, one being that of an American and like seeing the possibilities, but then also like the awareness of being Black in America and knowing the realities there, even if they don't always touch me. And through like some reading I'm doing, I learned that the term is called double conscious. W.E.B. Du Bois coined the phrase, I believe it was in like the 70s or the 80s, maybe even the 60s. I have to do some reading on it. I just came across the term and like read it and I was like, wow, that's exactly like what I'm experiencing. And I talk about that because I will be talking about that more in depth because I was really experiencing that in Florida. Well, I guess I can just talk to you about it now, but I do have a spoken word that I wrote in regards to this. So while in Florida, I had the same issue that's coming up for me now. It's just really beautiful there, and I see all like the lush plants and like the drapey, beautiful trees with the Spanish moss, which is just so like dreamy, and then like you see the old architecture. And then I was riding in the car with my boyfriend and his parents, and his mom goes, look, the Gambel Plantation. And I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. And so at first I'm like, oh, cool, like we should totally like go on a tour. I'm like, think it's gonna be so interesting, and it's gonna be admitting the wrongdoing of slavery, and then, you know, discussing how slaves basically kept a plantation afloat and how they constructed everything. They were the stonemasons, the architects, the hairdressers, the seamstress, like they did everything. And on top of that, I mean, these are people who learned a language on their own. They learned English on their own. That was not their original language, and they weren't being taught lessons. And even if we go further, like they learned to teach themselves to read and to write, and like learned astronomy, learning the stars to escape to freedom. Like, brilliant. So it's just really, really, we know that it's truly just hate. That even then and even now, there's people who think the African American mind is smaller than that of a white or a European American. Because, I mean, the proof is there. All of those obstacles. And so when I was in Florida, I couldn't help but like admire the scenery and the beauty, but then also I couldn't help but think about, oh, those beautiful trees I love with the Spanish moss. Like there were people who, you know, who swung from those trees, you know, hanging like the Spanish moss. And it was just really hard because I see the tree and I see it in its beauty, but then I also have that image. And so going back to the mansion, the Gambel Mansion, I go on the website and I was horrified. The website mentioned nothing about slaves. I mean, not expecting it to have like a detailed account of what you're going to find, but it was toting proudly that it's owned by the Daughters of the Confederacy, and that there's a plaque that was installed, I want to say within the last 10 years. There was a plaque honoring the Confederate general who owned the plantation and who fled when the Union soldiers were coming, and he fled to Europe, I believe England, and he led a second wealthy, well-off life, which is like, man, like, but I mean, there's karma. but it was just like, wow, like, what? I don't know. And it's like, I guess when you're an optimist and you want to believe the best of people, you always will be a little naive. Because everything I've read and that I know and that I see happening now in the country, the way African Americans are treated, I still believe that there can be changes. I don't believe that everything's going to be changed in my lifetime, because we're human and we have a lot of flaws and things that still haven't been addressed. And even once addressing things, addressing the heinous crimes against people of color that this country and its founding has created and perpetuated for all of these, decades or centuries. It's not going to be a quick fix, but I was surprised and I was just shocked by my feelings. It was an onslaught of feelings. I seriously felt like someone had just punched me in the chest. It was not a feeling I had before. I guess it was just acute surprise and pain, and I just started crying. And I was very surprised, by my tears. And I almost stopped myself, but I didn't, because part of my journey is accepting every part of me. And I've never thought crying makes a person weak. I know it's very cathartic, therapeutic, and I utilize it when I need to. But I was in the car with my boyfriend's family, who are white, and we don't talk about race. I mean, I'll mention things because I'm not going to censor my conversation and what's important to me anymore for someone else's comfort, because no one's words are more important than mine. And I'm finally accepting that. My story is just as important as the next person's story. I hope you know that for yourself too. Yes, we can say things with tact and we can speak in love, but no matter our intentions, some people are just going to be bothered, but you can't let it deter or detract from who you are as a person. So I was like, okay, I'm crying in the car, and people, Ben notices because he's sitting next to me and holds my hand, and he's so supportive, and I'm so grateful to have such an amazing mate in this life. And I was like, okay, Lord, I'm crying. I have an idea of what the emotions I'm feeling, but I didn't know everything. But it's okay. If crying is what my body, my spirit feels, sometimes we have emotions in our mind, can't understand what the emotion is. Our mind and our heart, they act together, but they also act separately, and they don't always understand each other, and that's why I think they war with each other. Just imagine, some relationships in your life that may be toxic, but your heart is telling you to stay, when your mind, is telling you it's time to move on, because fortunately, people take advantage. I think it's just, a byproduct of living in a broken world. And it's unfortunate that it's human nature for us to take advantage of one another. So when you set boundaries, you have to ensure that people are following them. And that's something I've been really learning, because the last year I've been focusing on living unapologetically, and that means I don't explain myself. I don't give reasons, because it's not your business. What I say is what I say, and that's it. You don't have to understand it. And if you want to be in my life, you just have to, if you want to be in my life, you have to treat me the way I want to be treated. But what I learned is you have to insist that people treat you the way you want to be treated. So if someone acts in a way that hurts you, it's up to you to respond in a way that lets them know that. Either be direct, or if it's that time, it's time to maybe distance yourself so they can figure some things out, because I used to always think it was my responsibility to tell everyone what they were doing and what needed to change in their life in response to how they interacted with me or whatever. No, people have to figure that out for themselves. Just like I had to realize that a lot of the negative interactions I was having was because I wasn't putting in boundaries, because I was putting people before me, and because I thought their feelings were more important than my own. So I was having the feelings of the plantation now, where it's the double consciousness. Then it's also something that I'm also writing about, the erasing of Black people, or those from the African diaspora from history. And so that's what I really saw today. Like the courthouse inside, there's paintings and like there's frescoes and everything on the ceilings and the walls, and it's just so, so beautiful. But there's not a single brown face. And then even when I was leaving, they have these paintings all around the different areas, like the pilgrims and stuff. And there's pilgrims, but then there's no Native Americans there. Okay. And then there's a section that says Egypt, and then we see Pharaoh and all these people, and they're white. And it's just hysterical. Just like we have the white Jesus with the blonde hair and blue eyes and all that. It's like, no. All of life began in Africa, and if you're a Christian, you believe the Bible is true, and you know this. I mean, look at Joseph's story, look at David, like, you know where we are in the Bible, then why would the Egyptians be white? Like, it doesn't make any kind of sense. But the problem is, like my last video, when we only are fed or given the narrative from one side, which has been the European side, because that's who founded our country and who has historically been within power and had the wealth to keep them in power through any means necessary. We've only been fed their stories, and so these same people who want to be elevated over another race exclude the race entirely. And so it was really just sad for me, because it's like, what if you are a child and you don't know a lot of history yet, and you're in the courthouse and you look up and you see all these images and you're like, oh wow, and all you see in America is white. Like, that right there, if you don't have the knowledge that you've gone out and attained, I'm gonna have to look that up. I think it's obtained. Obtained on your own. What you know is only what's been told to you or presented to you. And so it's like, even the fact of reading global history, world history, instead of just American, because we need the perspective of other people. We need the perspective, like how I'm reading the book written by a Native American, of a Native American who has done the research, someone who has ties to a group that was oppressed and who was killed off, and, you know, has stories passed down, who just has, you know, a different look. And that's what we need to have a full picture of life. So when I saw basically the erasure of just Africans completely from all the pictures inside, it was just really painful, because who do you think built that courthouse? You know? Who laid the foundations of our land? And I'm not asking for accolades. All I'm asking is for recognition. And that's why the hashtag representation matters is so important, because it does. Because what we see represented in our media, whether we are consciously taking it in or not, it's getting to us. And I know, even for myself, like relationships, because I didn't have a healthy romantic relationship modeled for me, I inadvertently was turning to what I had seen in the romantic relationships on TV. And because I had been in one, I didn't know that the relationships we see continuously over and over are primarily unhealthy relationships. Like even Disney. I love Disney because I love the art and I'm an artist. But I mean, just using that because it's an easy example. I mean, the relationships are ridiculous. I mean, a lot of the rom-coms, you see the same thing too. It's always a woman, if she has maybe a work situation or a love situation, love always comes first. Her work will suffer. She'll leave her job and fly somewhere else for him, just knowing him. I mean, we just have, what's another example? Oh, the Disney example. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted because I have this view over here. And there's just so much to look at. Let me turn this way so you can have a new view. So, Disney. So basically, the parents are usually never together. One is just not there, either through a vicious early murder like Finding Nemo, or just not talked about like Aladdin. Like, where was Jasmine's mom? Like, man. But I was turning to relationships like that, and it's like, okay, looking at Aladdin, like, he was a liar, he was a thief. It does not matter that he was poor or whatever, but he was a liar and a thief, and repeatedly. And it's just, you don't just say, okay, like, oh, you made a grand gesture, you came in on a flying rug, let me take you back. No, like, that's not healthy. And that's what I was doing, because seeing things like that just mixed with just who I am as a person, like having a big heart and being a people pleaser and not being aware of it. I was an enabler. And so it's like, if someone treats you poorly and you just like let them come back, then you're saying to them, yeah, that's how I get to treat her, and it's fine. And it's not good for either of you, because you're hindering each other's growth. So that's why self-reflection is great for everyone, because when you self-reflect, it causes other people to reflect as a side effect. So I'm going to talk about more, and I'm going to put it in letters from a woke woman about the erasing of those from the African diaspora from history. Because also, I just found this out, that South America is primarily those from Afro-Latina heritage. So from the African diaspora, like, Africans are like running things over there. And I didn't know that. And so that's also something I want to explore more, Afro-Latinos and Latinas, because that's a huge demographic that we don't really, well, at least I have a huge lack of knowledge regarding. And is it De La Negra? I'm drawing a blank. I think that's it. But she is Afro-Latina, and she's amazing, and she's really bringing the lack of information surrounding people of her same background. She's really bringing that to the forefront, and she's just beautiful. And you've probably seen her on, I think she's on Love and Hip Hop. She has a beautiful afro, and she has gray eyes, and she's just stunning. And she actually is my inspiration for when I wore my first afro, because she just looks beautiful. So even that representation, I saw her and she looked great, and that gave me the confidence to do it too. So I hope you got something great out of this. I hope that you will, just take some time when you're walking around to look around and see what you don't notice. So it's not about saying, oh, let me see how many black people I can count. Sometimes it's like just noticing, who do you see? So in paintings, who are you seeing over and over? When you're in the stores or when you're at a restaurant, who are the primary people you're seeing in, what's the word? Janitorial services, or in cleaning positions or such. And then think about the links in history. Think about our history as a country and who has been forced into, certain roles because of systemic racism. These are just different things to think about when you're walking around. It's just being mindful about everything you see, and not in a judgmental way, but thinking, what do I know in my history that could be a possible reason for this, or a lack of this, or whatever. But just asking yourself questions about what you see, and then doing the research to back up your hypothesis. All right, well, I hope everyone has a beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye. City Hall and the signage is the perfect example for what I was describing in regards to the erasure of persons from the African diaspora. Because on the signage we see the names of the two architects, but we don't read anything about the slaves who we can assume built the architecture as it was constructed in early 1800s. I also, after looking at the pictures I took in in the courthouse, I did notice some persons of color. I see Frederick Douglass, which is amazing. And then I also saw under the Egyptian area a person of a darker complexion, which is more accurate than the European depictions we often see. Also, there are a lot of persons from African descent underneath Lincoln. I don't care for their supplantation positions beneath him as if he's a savior,
but it's good to see them. It was also nice to see the Thurgood Marshall Courthouse. So there are some areas where African Americans are addressed, but I want to see it for everywhere that we're involved in. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves.